everybody. I'm Bexeho Khalil, the Executive Director of United to End Homelessness with Orange County United Way. And I just want to say thank you for taking time out of your day to join us. You probably have been in these forums where we have a community chat, but today is going to be a little bit different. We wanted to bring you together to spend some time to remember and honor people who have passed away while unhoused in our community. So it's a little bit different from our regular webinars. We're not going to have a back and forth conversation. Instead, we wanted to create space to recognize loss and hopefully find encouragement from just being together. By the end of November of this year, 379 people had passed away without fixed abode in our community, meaning that they did not have the safety of housing in their final days. And while this is lower when compared to the last couple of years, it is still a tragedy that we need to address. Each of those people mattered. Their lives had meaning, and their loss should be recognized. As the cold season has arrived, the temperatures are dropping and the nights have been getting longer, and we want to take time to honor the memory of those that we have lost. We know that people in this field are much closer to the tragedy and heartbreak and loss, as you are part of helping people overcoming barriers towards regaining their housing. And I know from my own time working on the front lines that not every life that is lost is given the opportunity to be mourned and acknowledged. Some of those that I know who passed while experiencing homelessness had funerals, but many did not. This time together is a chance for us to share space together, to recognize our shared collective grief and the personal grief that many of you hold from the passing of those that you came alongside, that you knew, the people with whom you shared stories, laughter, and provided care for as you helped them navigate through a challenging and complex system. Joining us today are three leaders who've been involved with addressing homelessness for several years. We have Father Dennis Kritz, the pastor of St. Philip Benizi, the Catholic Church in Fullerton, and leader in the Tri-Parish Collaborative. We also have Rabbi Kavod Wider, the spiritual leader for the Temple Bethel of South Orange County, and Dr. Mark Davis, pastor of St. Mark Presbyterian Church and chair of the Faith Leaders Council for United to End Homelessness. And I want to thank each of you today for joining us and for the heart that you have to care for people who've been experiencing homelessness. So in a moment, we're going to begin at the time of remembrance. We're going to share the names of the people who have passed away while unhoused in this last year and provide space for you to think about any of those that you knew who lost their lives as well. After this, I'm going to invite our guests to share a reflection that may help us show our respect and also inspire us and help us as we continue in this challenging work of finding solutions for homelessness in our community. Father Dennis, I'd like to invite you to share a few words with us.
Okay. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak on this occasion. We know that pretty much every faith tradition, it tells us that we are judged as human beings by our treatment of the least among us, be it the Abrahamic traditions, be it the Eastern traditions. All of them say in one way or another this, that we are called to treat the weakest among us well, in as much as we can to help. Among those most marginalized in our society are those who find themselves homeless. In our county, there's some 5,700 people who find themselves homeless, about a third to 40% unsheltered. Of those, between December 1st of last year and November 30th of this year, 379 of our brothers and sisters died on the streets this year. Thankfully, it's a lower number than it was the over 500 that had died last year, but it is nearly twice as high as it was in 2019, the last year before COVID, when something like only 209 had died then. Now, two of the people who died this year had asked for help, or we had relationships with here at St. Philip Benizi. One of them, who was a longtime person who would sleep on our campus in the past, and even up to the days that he died, he did cause us trouble. We did have to, on occasion, call the police about him. I was in active assistance there, trying to help with his mother to try to get him into the care court system and so forth. Well, a few days before Christmas last year, he disoriented or simply despondent. He walked in front of the train and died. A few months later, a young woman who is among the first families that we found homeless that were coming to us in February, a few days before Valentine's Day, she also died. And in both cases, it was hard. In both cases, there were challenges. The family that we tried to help a year before, whose mother died in this way, they refused assistance to for us. We walked them literally to the door of getting some significant help, and they ultimately turned it down. And she was the main one who did so at the time. So it is hard. It is frustrating in this regard, but still we are called, in fact, to help. And the challenges, of course, are high. Many of you would have stories like this too. I found myself just shaking my head, certainly inside, as I took a mother and her 3-year-old, to get assistance. And as the caseworker was talking to the mother, the girl was running around chasing butterflies, as it were, out on the field where we were before. Last year we were helping a grandmother who really should have been in a lazy boy chair, in some place where she wouldn't have to worry, just simply her legs up watching the Hallmark Channel, and she was concerned with 3 grandchildren that she was taking care of because your parents were not able to do so, and well, with her check, she was unable to really cover things well. These are challenges, they're heartbreaking and so forth. I just ask folks that please do not give up. And at minimum, when you come across cases like this of the seniors and of the families with small children, there draw the line, find some place to help them, because again, in as much as we do so, we will be judged favorably, in as much as we give up, as it were, at some point we ourselves will judge ourselves as not being able to do enough. Please let us do what we can. Let us continue to work as hard as we can, and to understand that even as we help, in fact, the least among us, we both do help ourselves, and we do, in fact, represent the Almighty who asks us all to be there. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Father Dennis. Rabbi Kavod, I'd like to invite you to join us next.
Thank you so much. It is also an honor to be here and to honor the memory of lots of lives, whole worlds of people, and to just share a little bit from Jewish tradition. While the plight of homeless is addressed in a number of traditional Jewish texts, one is hard pressed to find explicit prayers to God to provide shelter for the homeless in our liturgy. And at first glance, it might be troubling. Among the many praises of God, why don't we have a prayer that thanks God for providing shelter for the homeless? And we could look at the answer as twofold. First, the obligation to assist the homeless rests with the community, not God. Secondly, prayer serves to strengthen our resolve to meet this obligation by cultivating compassion and stirring our souls to action. And there are two themes within Jewish liturgy that, when viewed through the lens of homelessness, affirm our obligations and cultivate empathy and compassion. So I would call the first theme, night is a dangerous time. And the second is longing for a place to call home. In our prayer called Adon Olam, we read, into God's hand I place my spirit. When I sleep and when I awake, and with my spirit also my body, God is with me, I shall not fear. And the evening prayer, Hashkivenu, asks that God allow us to enter into nighttime in peace. The early morning prayers contain 15 blessings that are traditionally recited upon waking in the morning. And through these prayers, we ask God for the ability to rise intact from our beds in the morning. These prayers acknowledge the dangers of the night and the surrender of the self that occurs during sleep. Many of us are privileged to rise from a bed with clean sheets and a comfortable pillow in a room encased by other rooms that were ultimately protected from dangers with doors and locks and well-constructed roofs. And these prayers should remind us that the words, into God's hand I place my spirit, what do those mean to the schizophrenic middle-aged man sleeping in a cardboard box under a highway bridge? Or to the unemployed mother of three who finds temporary shelter among strangers in a city shelter? And with the increase of hate crimes against the homeless and danger of natural elements, the night is indeed a terrifying time. To wake up whole and healthy is truly a blessing. And the other theme, longing for a place to call home, appears more prominently in the Psalms that nestle in our core prayers. Psalm 27 gives the fullest expression to this longing. One thing I ask of the Lord, only do I seek, to dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. And similarly, Psalm 92 describes the ideal life through the metaphor of a tree that is deeply rooted in the house of God. This century-old longing for the comfort of being in God's presence is really about that primal longing for home. We learn for a sense of security, safety, and comfort that being in God's presence might offer. And these prayers remind us on a daily basis that home is not simply a shelter, but home is a shelter that's reliable, steady, safe, and secure. So as our own existential longing for home is reactivated each time that we recite prayers, that longing should ignite our compassion for those who truly lack a home. And that compassion should compel us to act and to fulfill the obligations to clothe the naked, feed the hungry, and provide shelter for the homeless. And so I would like to just offer just a final prayer here, which takes some of the piece from our memorial prayer in Jewish tradition and adds some of my own words. El Melech Rachamim, Shochein Bamromim, Hametzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Hashchina. God filled with compassion, whose loving presence ever surrounds us, bring perfect rest to all who have died unhoused, those who have died in the streets, in tent cities, public parks, and under viaducts. Protect those precious souls with the shelter they were denied in their lifetimes. Gather them under the softness of your wings. Show them love, bring them home. Remind us that no one is forgotten in your sight, that all are welcome at your table, that each that each and every one of their lives is a story of sacred worth and meaning that can never be lost. May the memories of their lives shine forth like the brilliance of the skies above as we rededicate ourselves to their memories now. Turn our grief and anger into resolve. Fill us with strength and will and purpose that we may once and for all end this endless night. Never let us forget our sacred responsibility to ensure that all are housed and clothed and fed, and let us never stop fighting for the basic essential dignity of every living, breathing soul. Ba'al harachamim tasirechem beseter kenafecha leolamim. Source of all compassion, inspire us to extend your shelter across this land and throughout the world, that all may know the blessings of safety and security now and forever. V'nomar, and let us say, Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi Code. I'd like to invite Dr. Mark Davis to come and join us now.
Thank you, Bex, and thank you all for being here. In the Christian church, we are in the season that we call Advent. It's a time when we prepare for the coming of the Christ. And during the season, we often circle back to the prophets who anticipate with us a time of God's judgment and salvation. The prophets could speak two languages, both of which I think are very appropriate for us right now. Whenever people were living in a time of security and prosperity, the prophets could speak rather harshly if they were not also living toward justice. And in particular, the prophets were concerned with those who were landless, those who were dependent on others in order to have the sufficient means to participate in that security and, if not, the prosperity. And I suspect that the prophets would have a lot to say to us today, when in each of our cities we have both gated communities and homeless encampments. So for those of you who engage in advocacy, those of you who write letters and put energy behind your hands for the hard work of justice, thank you for that work, because you are joining that prophetic voice. But at other times, the people's hearts were broken. They were tired. They felt frustration because they aimed to do the right thing, and it seemed that their work was never quite done. And in those times, the prophets could speak another language. It was a language of consolation, a language of comfort, the language of hope. And that language is also appropriate for this moment, because many of you have spent your time, your energy, your money, your emotional capital walking side by side with those persons on that long journey of moving from homelessness to housing. Many of you have walked alongside those who have been frustrated in their work and who can in turn frustrate you in your work. Many of you have lay awake at night, unhappy with the inability we have to change the system and fix everything. And for those of you who have spent your life in this manner of service, this grief is particularly hard. Glennon Doyle once referred to grief as a receipt that we have for having loved well. So if you are one of those who has really put everything out there and you're feeling particularly the pain of this moment. I invite you to hear the prophetic word of hope, that we do live toward a day when every tear will be dry and every person will have a place to live in security and comfort, and everybody will know the security of home. So in your grief now, I invite you to remember that you have loved well, and you are not alone in bearing this pain. But on are in your grief. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark. And thank you to everybody who joined us today in honoring the memories of those that we lost in this last year. Thank you again to Father Dennis, to Rabbi Kavod, and to Dr. Mark. I encourage each of you joining us today not to rush too quickly back to your day, but to take this moment for yourself. We're going to keep the Zoom room open. We will have music playing. So please, again, feel free to stay for as long as you need. I hope that this brief time together has been helpful. And as we continue our work to build an Orange County where everyone has a safe and an affordable place to call home. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you for the work that you do.